attendees received a report and recommendations regarding the streets selected for rehabilitation in fiscal year 2017-18 by the Pavement Management Program, and adopt a resolution amending the city's fiscal year 17-18 capital improvement program to include the Masson Avenue Rehabilitation Project.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight, I have my associate civil engineer with me to present this item, and both of us will be presenting on the city's pavement management program. Some of the information being presented tonight may look familiar to you, and as it should, because it was presented in previous study session. The presentation tonight will provide an overview of the city's pavement condition, available funding in the paving program, the deferred maintenance costs that's increasing, our approach to selecting streets for rehabilitation, and prioritization of methodology used for SB1 funding. So many residents may not be aware, but the city uses a program management software called Street Saver to track the conditions of the streets throughout the city. The city has been using Street Saver since 1998. The software was created by the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, MTC, and other agencies throughout California use the same software to organize and analyze pavement conditions. Street Saver also identifies a schedule for maintenance and reconstruction of city streets at the appropriate time in order to extend their overall life expectancy in the most efficient and economical manner. All Bay Area cities wishing to be eligible for federal and state grants for pavement management must also have the software such as Street Saver in place. The pavement condition is also updated every 2 years in the software by the firm selected by MTC through the Pavement Technical Assistance Program as well. So what is PCI? So the PCI measures the extent and severity of pavement surface distresses, such as cracks, patches, and distortions. And the index is used to determine the lifespan of the pavement or when the treatment shall be applied. Each street pavement sections are rated using a numerical index between 0 and 100, where 0 is the worst possible condition and 100 is the best. The gradation and rating you see on the slide is widely used throughout the paving industry. And the city's current PCI within the Street Saver database rating for the entire street network is 63, which is within the fair category. This includes all the arterials, collector, and local streets. At the lower right-hand corner, you see an example of a failed street section location, and that was Herman Street prior to being paved. The roadway section was resurfaced in the 2015 street rehabilitation project. So how does San Bruno PCI compares to other agencies? This slide shows the PCI data from the MTC for various agencies throughout the peninsula. It's a 3 years average, it's a moving average from 2013 to 2015. With this average here, the city of San Bruno is at 65. As the graph shows, there are other agencies that have higher PCIs than San Bruno, and there are some agencies that are lower as well. I think the lowest on this graph is at Millbury with 54. Next slide. This graph you see on the screen here is a typical pavement life cycle graph. On the y-axis, which is a vertical axis, is the pavement condition index, and then on the x-axis, the horizontal axis, is the time or lifespan of the pavement. The graph, the line that's in red, that is declining, shows that the longer the pavement is in place, the worse it will get, where reconstruction will be required. And this graph also shows the relationship of what should be done at a certain point in time. And the blue line shows the pavement preservation, which is a preventive maintenance performed on the road surface. The treatment is normally some type of slurry seal, which is less expensive. So if there are good roads in the network, we want to preserve those as much as we can so that it doesn't deteriorate over time. Otherwise, it'll end up being costly to rehab or reconstruct the roads. So it's good practice to perform preventive maintenance on the streets that are in good condition and to keep them from deteriorating. Next slide, please. So this, the pavement management program has an approximate balance of $3.8 million in the current fiscal year. And in 2015, the council elected to use the $3 million received from the staff reimbursement associated with the response to and recovery from the 2010 PG&E gas pipeline explosion for the pavement program. The council directed staff to distribute the funds equally, starting in fiscal year 16-17 to 18-19. Thus, the fiscal year 18-19 will be the last year where the reimbursement will be utilized. And the proposed budget for future years from fiscal year 19-20 onward is $1 million. However, this program budget does not include the funding that will be provided to the city by the passage of Senate Bill SB 1, which is referred to as the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017. The SB 1 funding source is from an increase in per gallon fuel tax, the gas tax, and vehicle registration fees to fund road maintenance and rehab projects on local streets and road systems. The state will begin collecting this new funding source starting this November, and it's estimated that the city will receive approximately $250,000 this fiscal year. And starting next fiscal year and future years, the city is estimated to receive approximately $750,000. Prior to receiving the funds, the state requires each agency to submit to the California Transportation Commission a list of streets or projects proposed to be funded with SB1 in an effort to facilitate accountability and transparency. And the streets or projects needs to be adopted into the city's capital improvement program budget through resolution and submitted to the California Transportation Commission for approval by October 16th in order to receive the SB1 funding. And staff discussed SB1 funding source during the Surface Infrastructure Subcommittee meeting and the deferred maintenance of field streets. The subcommittee recommended that this new funding source should be utilized to perform reconstruction of the city's worst street to reduce deferred maintenance backlog. So in order to promote a fair and equitable method to prioritize the streets to be paved, the subcommittee tasked staff to develop a criteria which will be presented later on in the presentation.
So on the previous slide, we talked about how much funding has been programmed into the pavement management program. This slide illustrates what's the current status of the city's pavement network and how it might look like 5 years from now. As you can see on the graph, there are two lines which represent the pavement condition index. The bottom orange line, which starts at 63 in 2017, is our city's current PCI. If no funding is allocated into the pavement program, this PCI will decline to 54 in 2021. The above blue line is the PCI after treatment is completed based on the allocated funding. After the roads are on the graph to 61 in 2021 due to a reduction in funding when it's reduced to approximately $1 million per year. The red bar on the graph represents the city's deferred maintenance, which consists of preventative maintenance or street rehabilitation that the pavement management program has identified as should have occurred during the year but is unable to be done due to insufficient funding. Deferred maintenance needs are expected to double over the next 5 years as funding continues to be insufficient to meet existing needs, and each year more streets deteriorate and get added to the existing backlog. Due to this gradual reduction in funding, the deferred maintenance is anticipated to jump to $30 million in 2021. So to assist in providing an order of magnitude cost for pavement maintenance, a street can be considered to be in one of three distinct categories. Those streets in good to very good condition typically require preventative maintenance such as a slurry seal, and this can cost on the order of approximately $30 million for a typical city street. $30,000. Streets in poor to fair condition typically require pavement rehabilitation such as a din or dick mill and fill operation that replaces the top layer of asphalt and which can cost on the order of approximately $150,000. Those streets in the worst condition are considered as failed and could require complete reconstruction, including a replacement of the asphalt layer as well as aggregate-based layers. This is the most expensive treatment and is similar to constructing a new street and can cost on the order of approximately $400,000. This means that we will only be able to reconstruct about 2,000 feet per year or about 2 city blocks as funding is limited. While selecting the worst streets is one approach towards pavement maintenance, we can't ignore spending money to keep good streets in good condition by spending minimal money for preventative maintenance. In order to make the most of the available funding and to ensure that pavement dollars are spent in the most efficient manner possible, staff recommends that the following approach be utilized in selecting the streets. To reduce the number of streets that require the most expensive treatment, pavement reconstruction, funding should be prioritized for street segments with PCI above 40. Streets with PCI under 40 can cost approximately 2 to 3 times more than a street with rehabilitation needs. For those streets that are already in good condition, we should prevent those streets from deteriorating further by applying preventative maintenance such as slurry seals on an ongoing basis. Slurry seals cost approximately 5 to 10 times less than asphalt overlays. Projects should have sufficient quantities of a single treatment type, as this provides an economies of scale. The bidding environment on construction projects is such that larger quantities of materials have lower unit prices, and this results in more streets fixed for a given dollar. Based on the streets selected, staff will also evaluate whether using alternative treatment technologies such as cold-in-place recycle, which consists of removing and reusing the existing asphalt surface, or rubberized asphalt concrete, which is a blend of asphalt cement and reclaimed tire rubber, could be utilized to help make the most of the available funding and reduce the deferred maintenance backlog. The city did receive a grant in the amount of approximately $240,000 from CalRecycle that could be applied towards the installation of rubberized asphalt concrete should this treatment type be deemed to be appropriate. This approach towards pavement management and the streets determined to be paved this fiscal year were discussed with the Surface Infrastructure Subcommittee. The subcommittee accepted the approach, and staff is here today for further discussion by City Council. The selected streets shown here would all receive an asphalt treatment consisting of either an overlay or mill and fill operation. And this is a map showing the location of the streets selected for pavement maintenance using that approach. On the previous slides, we discussed how it would be more cost-effective for the city to apply treatments on those streets that have not yet failed. However, while this approach would maintain the city's average network condition, it also tends to neglect maintenance on those streets that are in the worst condition and would require reconstruction, because those are streets that would cost the most to fix. As discussed by the Surface Infrastructure Subcommittee, rather than continuing to neglect those streets that are in the worst shape, the additional funding provided to the city through SB1 could be utilized for those worst streets. The funding that will be provided by SB1 is only a partial amount for this fiscal year of what would normally be provided, and will likely only be sufficient to do maintenance on just one street in the worst category. The subcommittee indicated that the street to be selected to receive SB1 funding should be that street which provides the highest public benefit, and staff was tasked with developing a set of criteria to use in that street selection for further evaluation by City Council. Staff has prepared the following criteria for evaluation when selecting the street to receive SB1 funding, and it consists of the street's existing pavement condition, whether there are multi-family residential properties with at least 3 units on that street, if there are gathering places on the street such as schools, parks, or other assembly places, and whether that street is on a bus route and what is the property density on that street. To facilitate discussion, staff also developed a point ranking system that could be used to select the street in a fair and equitable manner, and which is shown in the bottom right corner of the slide. Each street can receive up to 10 points, with pavement condition being the most heavily weighted. The streets in the worst shape, PCI 0 to 10, are allocated 4 points, while the streets in better shape, with PCI 31 to 40, receive 1 point. A street with at least 25% multifamily residential building is allocated 2 points, while a street with at least 1 multifamily residential building receives 1 point. The presence of an assembly place or bus route on a street each provides 1 point. Property density is also calculated and is done by dividing the pavement area by the number of properties on that street, and is used as a tiebreaker for streets with the same point scores. The more dense streets are ranked higher. Based on this prioritization methodology, Masson Avenue between Angus Avenue to San Bruno Avenue is the highest ranked due to the street's low PCI score and volume of multifamily residences. This table shows the current top 30 streets under this selection methodology, and will be updated and revised each time the city's pavement management program is updated with revised PCI information.
So in closing, the city's network currently has a PCI of 63, and this PCI will gradually decrease as the funding in the pavement management budget decreases over time. The deferred maintenance costs will begin to increase over time, since the roadways that are recommended for rehabilitation can't be performed due to the insufficient funding. But based on our assessment, in order to sustain a PCI of 63, the city needs to allocate approximately $1.8 million a year into the paving program. Our current approach as presented tonight is for the city to do a better job of preserving the pavement that are in good condition. So we want to preserve those streets that are so that it doesn't deteriorate over time. Otherwise, it ends up being more costly to rehab and reconstruct the roads in the future. And the infusion of the SB1 money will definitely help the city to improve more of our local streets. We need to ensure that the funding is used efficiently by evaluating different treatments to stretch the dollar even more. So that concludes our presentation. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff? Marty?
Yes. It's bleak, right? I mean, I commend you guys for coming up with, subcommittee as well, figuring out what the scraps of what we can put together, but we're in really, really bad shape, right? We're gonna have a deferred maintenance of $30 million in 5 years. And that graph, if you would have showed it another 5 more years, it would have just continued with that same slope, and our streets are gonna be in horrible shape. It's just that's just a reality. We need a revenue source. We need to figure it out. We need to again deal with a serious problem. Because if you're one of the other streets that are on this list, we're not going to get to you. 30 years to fix the worst streets. I mean, it's horrible. And we're doing the best we can, but we're not really solving the problem. It was great. The duct tape on that last slide. It's kind of summarizes what we're doing. We're barely maintaining it, and as your street gets older, it gets more expensive. And 20 years from now, I'm scared to even think what our streets are going to look like. So we have to. And again, if not this council, it's going to be the next council. It's going to have to decide, are we going to go and get a revenue stream to actually do more streets? We need to be spending at least, $5 to $6 million a year to get that in 5 years to get that deferred maintenance back. And we're spending 1.5 or 1.7 after that money kicks in. So we're of course, I'm going to vote for this, but I think we have to, I said it, the next council is going to have to decide how we're going to raise the money and make the tough call to make the tough decision to find ways to get the revenue, Just wanted to make sure, just curiously, that the paving that we're going to do in Crestmore 2 for the rebuild, is that accounted for in where our rating is going to be? Because those are they're getting brand new streets, right? So that volume, that of area is going to lift our score. So is that accounted for that in our graph?
Do you know if that's already?
So that score right now is just the current score as the city stands, and once that work is done, it will raise the number.
But the trajectory that 5-year plan, I mean, if we're not including Crestmore 2, that's a significant amount of streets. It's not going to save the world. It'll maybe get us like 2 more points up, but I was just curious if that was in your data.
Right. I don't think at this point it is not.
Right.
I think what we can do is, we have the software that
Right.
we can rerun
Right.
relatively quickly.
Those are my comments. Definitely in favor of and appreciate everything we're doing, but we got to do more. Some people are going to be wondering, well, my street's never been paved, and some of those answers are going to be, and it will not be paved in another 30 years. So what are we going to do about it?
Anyone else?
Well, it's a thankless job, and for the subcommittee, it's very difficult because the statistics are there, and you wish you could take care of these that are rated under 20, under 10 in some cases. But at $400,000 per street, you just don't have it. And what it does, and this is what we've learned through the subcommittee process and through the calculations, through this consultant. If you put in a certain amount of money into those that are rated 40 and above, you will maintain that, what was it, the 60 or just above 60. And that's all we can do right now. And so, and it's easy for us to say, well, why not put in another $1 million? Why not put in another $500,000? At least we're budgeting, at least this council is now budgeting, 1.75 million, for the next few years. Hopefully, with enough residents like my colleague here who probably not going to see her street resurfaced in a while, there'll be more money from those future councils to take care of some of those lower rates. But the thing is that we can't get less. We can't get less, or else that thing is going to take a dive. So it's the best we can do now, and yeah, I look forward to future councils finding money amongst the other things to take care of this.
Anyone else? Rico?
Through the chair, I think it's important too that folks have an understanding by going to the website that this information is downloaded and user-friendly, because obviously this can be a little overwhelming. But I think that the biggest question is, so if I have a concern, where do I address it? The old adage is, if my whole block does it, then that puts me on the priority list, which isn't always the case, even though staff does track each concern/complaint that comes in. And they know, and they keep a tally of that. That was brought to us at the subcommittee level for our information as well. But again, you're looking at it globally. I mean, because some of us are out on the streets, and you can see the wear and tear. I mean, this council has tried to do some things. When it got the $3 million back from the staffing reimbursement from the PG&E fund, we allocated an extra $1 million for 3 years to try to keep and get the score up higher and maintain and address some of the concerns on the streets. So we were doing what we can, and again, the SB1 only gets us a little ways, and that's why we thought that should be allocated toward those streets that are in extremely bad condition to address some of those rather than not addressing those at all. I would agree that I think in 2018, we're going to have to, and staff, Jimmy and Dave have said that, is that, we can keep going at this level, but if we want to increase it, then the funding is the answer. And then the answer is, how do you get it? There's the big question. And what are people willing to do, promote, and campaign for, more or less? So this is a start. It doesn't address everybody, of course, but I think we need to go down this path and then look at the elephant in the room into 18.
Anything else or action by this council?
Well, I just want to, thank you. I just want to clarify my colleague's comment earlier, because my street is the second one listed and it has a PCI of 23. So probably not in my lifetime will it ever get repaved, but that's all right. So first of all, I'd like to thank staff for putting this all together. I know it's a tremendous amount of work, and I think it's a very well done project. I think the recommendations you made were thoughtful and succinct, and I am particularly impressed with the point system that you came up with on how to make these hard decisions. It's not easy, because my neighbor, when I go home, is going to complain to me that our street is yet again is not going to be paved. But as I said, that's the way it goes. So with having said that, I will introduce the resolution. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I make one more comment? When we get closer to knowing more and more about how much money we are actually getting from SB1 next fiscal year, maybe we need to take a little time to think about how we allocate that. Maybe we should think about putting so much aside for the failed streets every year. Just a thought. Yeah, I know you're doing it for this time, but I'm thinking in the going forward to look at how we actually allocate that, maybe by percentage or something. Anyway, sorry.
Councilmember O'Connell?
Aye.
Councilmember Marty Medina?
Aye.
Councilmember Rico Medina?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Ibarra?
Aye.
Mayor Ruane?
Aye.